Hello, Hannah.
Hello, Shane.
Guess what we're doing today?
Admiral Byrd.
Yeah. It's good.
You keep telling me that nothing creepy or weird happened,
It's
that
true.
it's a totally normal story, and you don't know why you picked it for the podcast, but I just simply don't believe you.
That's what I put on the post today. The announcement post that we do on the Monday.
Yeah, I haven't seen them for a little while because I'm kind of off social media right now until Easter, but I'll go back and look at all of them when I get back on there.
Yeah, nothing totally normal episode, nothing bad today. So let's
I just don't believe that.
he just flew a plane to the North Pole and then the South Pole.
That was it?
Yeah,
Went
it's
fine?
kind of just ties into Amelia Earhart or whatever.
Earhart.
Yep.
Put some respect on her name.
The Intimidator.
Gosh, cut that out.
So, yeah, nothing bad happened, nothing weird. Yeah, so let's do the show.
Yeah,
That's
good
it.
idea.
Do you have any announcements to do?
I don't think so.
Follow us on social media.
You're crushing it today.
I know. I didn't prepare very much for the intro to this show today. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Country Roads Creeps and tell us how very normal this episode was, because it is. Admiral Byrd, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, listen, there's a lot of info to get into here. There's like literally no chance I can cover everything in like one episode if I covered everything. There's all kinds of like documentaries and shows and other podcasts and reports and papers and stuff that like people have researched and written and done and recorded and all the stuff. It's just a lot of stuff. But kind of as always, the general disclaimer is source materials don't necessarily agree with each other, and the information kind of comes with like a big list of caveats and
As it always does.
yeah. So like what ifs and all that. Basically it's an old story with some conspiracy, fake history, oddball nonsense. So just because like you hear something somewhere else or read something is true / is false doesn't really mean that it actually is, like, or really mean anything in the context of the episode. Because it's all nonsense. It's all crazy. So even though it's totally a normal episode and nothing bad happens. So with that said, we would obviously love to hear everything that you think about all of the things and what your theories are. And you can message us or comment on our posts on countryroadscreeps@instagram.com. Or how? Instagram.com / at countryroadscreeps or Facebook / countryroadscreeps.com. So
You're butchering it.
Country Roads back. What does Joey say? He's like your Backroads Creep Show, Backroads Creepy Radio Show. It's like, well, not on the radio, not even the right name, not.
He's trying.
So he's like, I hit like on the post though.
Oh,
So
thanks, Joey.
by the way, my aunt told me the other day that she listened to the Shadow People episode, and she was like, I hope I never encounter one of those.
Yeah.
She's like, never have.
They're not great.
Now I don't want to. So anyway, if you love our show, Country Roads, Backroads Creep Show at Facebook.com, then you can leave us a 5-star review. Did you know that we have 9 so far Spotify reviews?
Yep.
You could be the 10th. Do you know what the 10th person wins?
Our love and affection.
Yes. So leave us 5 stars. And we're on all the podcasting platforms, so you can leave us 5 stars on everything. And follow us, obviously. Here we go. Okay, ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm going to start this kind of the same way that we do most of them, which is like the history, background, context information.
Yeah.
Like basically like first 2 paragraphs of Wikipedia information, you know?
Yeah.
How we usually do.
Yeah.
So listen.
I have the context.
Admiral Richard Evelyn Byrd Jr. was born in Winchester, Virginia, son of Esther Bowling Flood and Richard Evelyn Byrd Sr. He was actually a descendant of one of the first families of Virginia.
Mhm.
You want to take a guess at who his ancestors were?
Just tell me.
John Rolfe and his wife, Pocahontas, the one and only
Wait,
Pocahontas.
for real?
The Pocahontas, the one that Disney made that movie about.
Wow, that's cool.
William Byrd II of Westover Plantation. He established Richmond.
Okay.
William Byrd I and Robert King Carter, who was a colonial governor. He was descended from George Yeardley, who was one of the first slave owners in colonial America. Not really like the best, like highlight,
Yeah.
but he was the first. So,
Ooh.
Samuel Argall, who was an English naval officer and adventurer, and he was the brother of Virginia Governor and U.S. Senator Harry F. Byrd, who was kind of a dominant guy in the Virginia Democratic Party from the 1920s until the 60s. And their father served as Speaker of the Virginia House of Delegates for a certain amount of time. So it turns out this kind of is an Appalachia episode.
Okay.
Also, I couldn't find anything if he was related to Robert C. Byrd, who is a famous West Virginia senator.
Right. There's probably
I'm
some.
kind of assuming
distant
there's a pretty good
connection.
chance, but
Yeah.
anyway.
Somewhere along the way.
Did you know that Robert C. Byrd is the longest serving senator or representative? Which one was he? Senator? Doesn't matter.
He's making us look bad.
He's like the grand dragon of the KKK or whatever. So
Shane, cut that out.
he was.
Wait, for real?
Yeah.
I thought you were just making that up.
No. So, okay, for those of you who don't know, Robert C. Byrd is the longest.
Wait, before you
serving
say this,
senator.
are you 100% positive? That's
He,
facts.
not the Grand Dragon, but he was the leader of a Ku Klux Klan affiliated group, or the actual Ku Klux Klan actually in West Virginia.
He was a senator, by the way.
Senator, longest serving ever.
And
he was
representative?
he was very high up there. Like, I forget, they have stupid names for their leaders, like Grand Wizard, Grand Dragon, and there's like a Grand something another that sounds like Lord of the Rings characters, or like if you're playing Dungeons and Dragons with your friends. And so, but he did, later on, he was like, I was like an angry young man and didn't know what I was doing, and he rescinded all of that stuff and apologized, and he left his affiliation of that group, but he was extremely high up there in the KKK for a long time.
Wow.
So
That's not good.
yeah, there's all kinds of roads and bridges named after him in West Virginia, so that's cool.
For real, for sure.
Like, oh, his
name is all over this state.
his wife has a college.
Oh.
It's the nuttiest, like
Yeah.
one of the nuttiest things is that like, oh, this famous guy that everybody loves, and he did a bunch of, like, albeit a lot of really, really good
Yeah.
stuff for the state. Like the Grand Dragon or whatever for the KKK. Like,
Not the Grand Dragon, but up there.
which one was he? You're looking it up right now?
Yeah, I was trying to look it up a little bit. On his Wikipedia article, it says he led a local chapter of the KKK in the 1940s, an action he later described as the greatest mistake I ever made. Yeah, no joke, my guy.
Yeah.
Horrible mistake. I don't know what his position was, though.
Not the like, oh, I went to a party and didn't really like it. I was the leader.
Yeah.
He was,
Horrible.
he was, and not to like defame a racist character or anything, but he was elected like a really high title for the KKK. So
Man, the more you know.
yeah. Anyway, that's kind of off track, but
Yeah.
the Byrd guy,
Right.
not a member of the KKK. Actually, turns out to be a really cool guy. January 20th, 1915, Richard Byrd married Marie Donaldson Ames, and he actually later named a region of Antarctica the Marie Byrd Land after her.
Mm.
And and a mountain range, the Ames Range, after her father. So they had 4 children, and then they moved to Boston. So Byrd was friends with Edsel Ford and his father, Henry Ford. You know, the guy that made
The cars?
the cars? Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you ever hear the catchphrase that they used for Fords back in the day? Where he was like, you can have any color you want as long as it's black. Because black paint was either like the cheapest or the only kind of car paint that they had.
It's funny.
I don't remember what the thing was, but
Yeah.
anyway. Henry Ford, I'm speaking of, he really liked the polar exploits that Richard Byrd was doing, and he actually ended up sponsoring and financing some of the polar expeditions for Byrd under like the Ford Motor Company, which is kind of cool. Richard Byrd had a pet dog named Igloo who accompanied him to the North and South Poles and is buried at the Pine Ridge Pet Cemetery with a tombstone that reads, "He was more than a friend." The Pine Ridge Pet Cemetery is like huge. It's got like 17,000 pets buried there, which is insane.
Holy moly. Where is that?
Pine Ridge
Pine Ridge. Okay.
Pet Cemetery.
Cool.
In,
I mean, not cool that it's a cemetery, but like cool it's the biggest one, I guess. Interesting is the word I should have said.
I don't know if it's like number 1, but it's probably is.
Big.
It's huge. Has more than,
That's interesting.
more than a lot. So he attended the Virginia Military Institute for 2 years and transferred to the University of Virginia. And he ended up taking an appointment to the United States Naval Academy due to some financial circumstances. And he was appointed as a midshipman on May 28th of 1908. And on June 8th of 1912, he graduated from that Naval Academy and was commissioned as an ensign in the United States Navy. And on July 14th, 1912, he was assigned to the battleship USS Wyoming and did some service in the Caribbean Sea, not as a pirate though. And he received his first letter of commendation and later a silver life-saving medal for twice plunging fully clothed to rescue a sailor who had fallen overboard.
Wow.
In 1914, he transferred to an armored cruiser called the USS Washington, served in Mexican waters in June following the American intervention in April, which was the United States kind of intervened in some of the Mexican Revolution sort of stuff that was going on. Anyway, he served in some of that. So then he was assigned to a gunboat, the USS Dolphin, which served as the yacht of the Secretary of the Navy. And this assignment kind of let him get into contact with some of the high-ranking officials and dignitaries, which included then Assistant Secretary of the Navy, Franklin Roosevelt.
Mm.
That's, I believe, the same Franklin Roosevelt, Franklin D. Roosevelt, FDR.
I assumed that's who you were talking about.
Who I actually read somewhere that some people think that he is the worst president almost of all time ever. I don't know why. I didn't.
So that's kind of a hot take, isn't it?
I didn't look into it. I was like, I'm not going to research that. I just want to put it into the podcast.
That's an interesting position.
So,
okay.
I'm going to assume that it has something to do with like suspending some of the habeas corpus stuff for Japanese nationals during World War II. But I don't necessarily know 100% of all of that. So
yeah,
that may not be Franklin D. Roosevelt. You might want to look that up. I don't know history.
This is not my episode.
So, well, you can always expect some good misinformation from Shane episodes. So, especially when we get into some of the conspiracy episodes.
Oh my gosh.
I want to say
I'm scared for those.
all kinds of lies. So
propaganda.
FDR served as president for World War II, though. So I think that is probably why, at least one of the big reasons he would be known as the worst. So Byrd was promoted to rank of lieutenant on June 8th, 1915. And during that assignment to the Dolphin, he was commanded by the future Fleet Admiral William D. Leahy, who served as the chief of staff to the president, FDR, during World War II, then assigned So this particular assignment was, then he was going to be forced to retire to the presidential yacht of the USS Mayflower because he had an ankle injury and he was medically retired.
Okay.
So his last official assignment would be to the USS Mayflower. So he was assigned as an inspector and instructor to Rhode Island Naval Militia, did such a good job that he oversaw the mobilization of that militia shortly after the United States entry into World War I. So anyway, the war happens. He does really, really good, and he's awarded a letter of commendation from the Secretary of the Navy, which after World War II was converted to the Navy Commendation Medal. And after that war, after not World War II, World War I, he volunteered to be a crew member on the U.S. Navy's 1919 aerial transatlantic crossing, which I think is that the same one that you talked about with Amelia Earhart?
It sounds like it.
So that was historic mission. First time the Atlantic Ocean would be crossed by an aircraft. It was decided, though, only men who had not served overseas would be allowed on the mission. So unfortunately for Byrd, his tour of duty in Newfoundland was considered an overseas service.
Mm.
But he was able to make some good contributions because of his expertise in aerial navigation. He was appointed to plan the flight path for the mission. And so in 1921, he volunteered to attempt a solo nonstop crossing of the Atlantic Ocean, prefiguring Charles Lindbergh's historic flight by 6 years.
Wow.
So he was then thwarted, as they say back in the day, by Secretary of the Navy Theodore Roosevelt Jr., who thought that the risks would outweigh the rewards for flying nonstop across the Atlantic.
Mm.
So anyway, in 1926, he goes to the North Pole, where nothing bad happened. So Byrd and the Navy chief aviation pilot Floyd Bennett attempted a flight over North Pole in a Fokker FV-11A/3M trimotor monoplane named the Josephine Ford after the daughter of the Ford Motor Company president, Edsel Ford, who financed that expedition. And the flight left from Spitzberg, which is in Svalbard, and returned to its takeoff airfield lasting 15 hours and 57 minutes, including a 13-minute circling little event at the farthest north point.
Circling event?
Yeah. Whatever you would call it. They spent 13 minutes going in a circle. So,
yeah, circling event.
Byrd and Bennett said that they reached the North Pole at a distance of 1,535 miles, which is 1,335 nautical miles. I don't know what the difference is. I'm not going to do the math. He came back to the United States from the Arctic and became a national hero. Do you know why?
No.
Because he flew around the North Pole. Pay attention. So, Congress passed a special act on December 21st, 1926, promoting him to the rank of commander and awarding Floyd Bennett and him the Medal of Honor. And Bennett was promoted to the warrant officer rank, and Byrd was, actually both of them, Byrd and Bennett, were presented with the Tiffany Cross versions of the Medal of Honor at the White House by President Calvin Coolidge. Also, I looked it up, known as the coolest president, because cool is in his last name. Just kidding. I made that up on the spot. So, more misinformation, Shane episode. So, also, I didn't put this in here, but I did find on here that the Tiffany Cross version of the Medal of Honor is, I guess there's like two different versions of the Medal of Honor. You get one for doing like something super heroic in a combat situation. And then there's one that's like a non-combatant version of doing something really cool, like flying in a circle around the North Pole. So,
cool.
Some doubts have been raised about whether he actually reached the North Pole or not. And there's been some defenses and some heated controversies and opinions being given. Anyway, in 1958, the Norwegian-American aviator and explorer Bert Bouchin cast some doubt on all of his North Pole expedition and flying in a circle. On what he said, the basis that the plane's speed wouldn't be able to get there and back and fly in a circle in the amount of time that they said. So, and then he also said, Bouchin said that Floyd Bennett confessed to him months after the flight that Byrd and he had not ever reached the North Pole.
For real?
So, that's what he says, but I don't believe that.
Yeah.
So, anyway, there's some problems with his official report after the flight and his diary that was released in 1996, apparently, where he erased some of the things. And there were some technical details and some of the stuff had changed. I'm not going to get too into the weeds about it, but it does appear that there's some controversy over not only if he did fly over the North Pole, but if it was even possible given the technical details of the aircraft and what he wrote in his diary, which can still partially be read even though it was erased. So, in 1927, he wanted to fly over the Atlantic using the same crew, Floyd Bennett as chief pilot, and this guy, Burnt Bouchin, who was accusing him of 30 years later of not being in the North Pole. So, but he didn't know that he was accusing him 30 years later yet. He just wanted him in his crew in 1927.
You think you know a person?
Yeah, for real. So, Bert Acosta and Lieutenant George Novel were some other crew members, but he crashed, severely injuring Floyd Bennett. And Byrd himself was injured, but also just a little bit, just slightly. So Charles Lindbergh ended up winning the Orteig Prize for flying nonstop from U.S. to France, which was a $25,000 prize. And it's funny that he did it because he actually applied to be part of Byrd's North Pole expedition, but his bid came too late. So,
snooze, you lose.
Richard Byrd continued his quest across the Atlantic nonstop, naming Burnt Bouchin to replace Floyd Bennett, who had not yet fully recovered from his injuries, as the chief pilot. And Byrd, Bouchin, Acosta, and Novel flew from Roosevelt Field, which is in New York, on June 29th, 1927. On board was mail from the U.S. Postal Service to demonstrate the practicality of the aircraft. I'm doing air quotes, even though it's not a video podcast. And they came over France the next day. Now, some of these dates are kind of screwed up because it's like, oh, they left on June 29th, but they arrived in France the next day on July 1st. But I happen to know, as a fact, June has 30 days at least. So
30 days exactly.
At least. And so that doesn't make any kind of sense. Also, at most.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they were prevented from landing in Paris because of cloud cover, and they returned to the coast of Normandy and crash landed near the beach at Versailles, known as Gold Beach, during the Normandy invasion. And there weren't any fatalities.
That's good.
Yeah, that's great. Anyway, in France, Richard Byrd and his crew were received as heroes, and Byrd was invested as an officer in the French Legion of Honor by Prime Minister Raymond Poincaré. So then they came back to the United States, and there was a big elaborate dinner, kind of like when Donald Trump served all those football players McDonald's.
Oh my
remember that?
gosh, yeah, they got literally McDonald's cheeseburgers and fries.
Yeah, so they had that for Richard Byrd, and it wasn't actually McDonald's. It was like probably actually elaborate, but that's just...
which one? The Donald Trump dinner was actually McDonald's.
I know, but
you're talking about this
particular
one.
dinner,
Yeah, okay.
was probably actually an elaborate.
Nice.
It wasn't like they didn't just get like cheeseburgers from wherever. Like,
that's so crazy.
I happened to think about that just now as I was reading it. I was like,
that's really funny.
Remember that time Donald Trump got Coca-Cola and McDonald's for all those football players and then had ice cream?
Yeah.
Like,
can you imagine you get invited to the White House and that's what you're served?
If he could have at least gotten them Chick-fil-A, do you think it would have been as big of a controversy if he got them Chick-fil-A?
Probably.
You think so?
Yeah.
I don't know. I would like it if
we like Chick-fil-A, but
if the president
not
maybe
at the White House.
It was like Olive Garden, and they're like, we had a beautiful Italian dinner, and it was Olive Garden.
That's pretty funny.
Anyway, so they had this elaborate dinner in New York City, and they were, Byrd and Novel were awarded the Distinguished Flying Crosses by the Secretary of the Navy, Curtis D. Wilbur. Do you know who that is?
No.
Me neither. Acosta and Bouchin did not receive the Distinguished Flying Cross because at that time could only be awarded to members of the armed services and not to civilians. So, in 1928, Richard Byrd started his first expedition to Antarctica.
Good enunciation.
It's like saying Connecticut.
Yeah. Or when you like go to Huntington and the GPS says Huntington.
I say that now because in the show Band of Brothers, have you ever watched that?
Yeah, I've seen episodes.
Yeah, so they're in the Battle of the Bulge, I think is this few episodes that they're in. They're sitting in the trees in, I guess it's the Arden Forest that they're in, and one of the guys goes, he goes, "Hey, Lieutenant, where are you from?" And he says, "Huntington."
Mm-hmm.
He goes, "Huntington?"
You gotta hit the T's.
So
Huntington.
So now every time I hear Huntington, I'm like, Huntington.
Yeah.
So I also, I was in, so, you know, Charleston, right? There's, South Charleston, where there's like a Chick-fil-A and a Walmart, and there's like a Target and stuff all in a big area there. So I was going to meet somebody for food, and I stopped at Chick-fil-A and got food. And then I went and parked because it was packed. I went and parked across the street in like the shopping center kind of parking lot. And there's a building there with a green sign, and the sign started with an H. And so I texted this person. I was like, I'm here at the Huntington Bank, and it's a Humana. And because I didn't read, and I was like, it's Huntington Bank. And so she showed up, and she was like, This is a Humana. What are you talking about? And I was like, that's what I said. And she's like, you said a Huntington Bank. And I was like, that's what it is. And she's like, that says Humana. And I'm like, I don't know what you want from me. That's what it is.
Illiterate.
It's the same. It's the same in my head. Anyway. Huntington. Anyway.
We need to make that a sound.
Huntington. So.
China.
I just hit the China sound. We don't know because Hannah doesn't know because we don't have headphones on right now, but the people that are listening know that I just hit the Trump China sound. China. So, first expedition to Antarctica. He had 2 ships, 3 airplanes. And...
That's good.
Huh?
That sounds good. 2 ships, 3
airplanes. Yeah, that's great. So, anyway, he had... the ship called Samson, that was a Norwegian sealing ship, came into fame because some people said that this was in the vicinity of the Titanic when it sank. So, which is kind of like, maybe it wouldn't be fame, it'd be infamy because it didn't help.
Yeah.
Like it was there, didn't do anything.
Right.
Also misinformation, I don't know that to be true. I didn't look into it. So.
Shane. Stellar research today.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to the thing. I'm just listen. So anyway, it's like the ship this, and I'm like, what did they do? And I copy and paste to Google this thing, and they're like, oh, it was in the vicinity of the Titanic, and I'm like, that's cool. And then I put it in, and then I don't do any further research. So
fair enough. Back to the topic at hand.
So anyway, he had the Eleanor Bowling, named after his mother. And a Ford tri-motor airplane called the Floyd Bennett, named after recently deceased pilot of Byrd's previous expeditions, the Floyd Bennett. That was flown by Dean Smith, and he had a Fairchild FC-2W2 NX8006 built in 1928, named Stars and Stripes. It's actually now displayed at the National Air and Space Museum. The National Air and Space Museum's Stephen F. Udzarhazy Center, which is a mouthful. Say that 5 times fast. So, also had a Fokker super universal monoplane called the Virginia. You remember that movie? There was like 3 movies made to Meet the Fockers.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, base camp, which was named Little America, was constructed on the Ross Ice Shelf, and they did some scientific expeditions by snowshoe, dog sled, snowmobile, and aeroplane to increase the interest of youth in Arctic exploration. A 19-year-old American Boy Scout named Paul Alman Seipel was chosen to accompany the expedition. He went on to earn a doctorate, and he is the only other person, other than Richard Byrd himself, to participate in all 5 of the Antarctica expeditions. So, he's an Eagle Scout. Did you know that?
I do know.
Eagle Scout. An Eagle Scout from Huntington. He's not from Huntington. They did some photographic expeditions and geological surveys, and just generally had a really swell time.
Good for them.
They maintained constant radio contact with the outside world. And after the first winter, they came back to do more expeditions on November 28th. So when I'm saying this, I don't like, it was kind of hard for me reading it because I'm generally dumber than our audience probably, but I'm like, after the winter, they came back in November, but the South Pole is summer in the winter time. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
So
Opposite hemisphere season.
yeah, so it's summer in December there, which is insane because how does it?
That's weird to think about.
Because if the Earth's flat, you would think it's the same everywhere.
Shane, shut up.
Anyway, Richard Byrd, along with Burnt Bouchin,
Burnt is his name?
Burnt Bernt Bouchin, Burnt Bouchin, and Harold June, which was a co-pilot and radio man, and they took Ashley McKinley, who was a photographer, and they flew the Floyd Bennett to the South Pole and back in 18 hours and 41 minutes. They had some difficulty gaining enough altitude, and they had to dump some empty gas tanks and their emergency supplies to achieve the altitude of the polar plateau, but they were successful. Anyway, so that achievement made Byrd get promoted to the rank of Rear Admiral by a special act of Congress on December 21st, 1929, not 2029. That's in a few years, though. He was only 41 at the time, and so that made him the youngest admiral in the history of the United States Navy. So just to like say how important that is, like it's like, oh, he made admiral, but none of his other classmates would ever reach the rank of Rear Admiral until 1942, which is 30 years after they had been commissioned for service.
Wow.
And he's one of only 4 people to achieve Rear Admiral without first having the rank of a captain. So
good for him.
Yeah, great. So more exploration. And then they went to North America on June 18th. And then there was a gold medal of the American Geographical Society that was honored for this this expedition. And so they got that. And then Richard Byrd cultivated some relationships with some powerful individuals. Maybe you'll recognize some of these names: President Franklin Roosevelt, Henry Ford, Edsel Ford, John D. Rockefeller Jr., and Vincent Astor, because he wanted to finance for some more expeditions, more exploration. So anyway, as a token of his gratitude, so to speak, for the financing and the political yes men to say that he's allowed to do these expeditions, he would name some of the geographic features in the Antarctic after those people. So there's like,
Oh, okay.
there's like some, Roosevelt whatevers and some Rockefeller whatevers, and yeah. So, or at least that's what he named them for, like the reports. I don't know if they're still named that stuff, but
Right.
so there's a little bit of playing the political game here, but it's kind of like a necessary evil, which we've seen in some or other historical adventures, and I'm sure this isn't.
Try to do sometimes.
Yeah, I'm sure this isn't the last time we're going to talk about it. So, second expedition. during the summer of 1933 to 1934. So, because it's winter during the summertime, and it's winter and summer during the wintertime. So, Byrd spent 5 months alone operating a meteorological station. That's weather. Did you know that?
Meteorological.
Yeah. I was like, what are they studying meteors for? And then I put it together, like immediately put it together, like, oh, that's
Oh my gosh.
meteorology.
Weather person.
That's the weather. So,
Good context clues there.
yeah. For those of you who didn't know, like I didn't for like 5 seconds after I read it.
You knew it. Just had to take a second.
Yeah, it didn't click. He narrowly escaped with his life after suffering carbon monoxide poisoning from a poorly ventilated stove.
Oh my gosh.
There were some unusual radio transmissions from him, which kind of started to alarm some of the guys at base camp.
Yeah.
And so then they attempted to go to Advanced Base, which is what the place was called that he was at, operating this meteorological station. First 2 trips were failures because of darkness and snow and mechanical troubles. And then finally, they arrived at Advanced Base where they found Richard Byrd in poor physical health.
From the carbon monoxide poisoning?
AKA he's dying. So they stayed there until October 12th. And there's an airplane from the base that came and picked him up. And then the rest of the men returned to base camp with a tractor. So I wonder if it was a John Deere. So Richard Byrd described that expedition in his autobiography called Alone, because he spent 5 months there alone, which honestly to me
crazy.
Sounds like the most peaceful time. So
no, I would lose my mind.
It's you literally, like, first of all,
Not be alone that long.
You're alone by yourself for a long time, but also there's not even the chance of anybody accidentally showing up to talk to you.
Like, I do value alone time. Like when I get home from work, I like to sit and decompress and not talk. But for 5 months, I would lose it. I would definitely want to be with somebody.
Mm-hmm. I would probably sing songs.
Yeah, you would definitely end up talking to yourself, I feel like.
I talk to myself now. I talk to myself on the podcast. So
I'm just an illusion.
I'm going to find out in 10 years that I'm actually in a Shutter Island situation. This is all.
Yeah.
I've just been in a rubber room the entire time. There's actually not.
The past literal decade of our friendship has been a hallucination.
Yeah.
That'd be crazy.
So anyway, President Roosevelt and the U.S. General Postmaster honored this expedition to the Antarctic with an official stamp. And so that helped with funding for the next one. So after that, he visited Hamburg in 1938. He was invited by Germany to participate in the 1938/1939 expedition to New Schwabenland, which he declined. I wonder why. The U.S. wasn't actually involved with a war in Germany yet, but Hitler had served as the Führer since 1934 and coincidentally invaded Poland the next year in 1939. So his third expedition was the first one financed and conducted by the United States government, and that project included extensive studies of geology, biology, meteorology, and just general exploration. So the innovative Antarctic snow cruiser was brought with that expedition. It broke down day one, so week one. It broke down real soon. So I'll tell you what's wrong with it. There ain't no gas in it. So within a few months, he was recalled to active duty for the office of the Chief of Naval Operations. And the expedition that he was on continued in the Antarctica without him, but the last of the participants for that expedition left March 22nd of 1941. So his participation in World War II isn't really special. He didn't really do a big hero thing, it was more like an oversight job, it seems like. He toured a bunch of bases and did inspections and stuff like that, but he was sent to assume the direction of a survey and, quote, investigation of certain islands in the East and South Pacific in connection with national defense and commercial airline bases and routes.
Shane's doing air quotes through that whole thing.
Yeah. That's what it is. So the Special Navy mission sailed on the Pacific, and there was an explosion at sea with the USS Concord, which is a big famous Navy story. A bunch of sailors died. And Byrd commended the bravery of the sailors there in a letter citing, quote, their courage and efficiency, said it made him proud to be an American. And on February 10th, 1945, Byrd received the Order of Christopher Columbus from the government of the Dominican Republic. And he was present at the Japanese surrender in Tokyo Bay on September 2nd, 1945. And he was released from active duty on October 1st, 1945. And in recognition of his service during World War II, he received 2 awards of the Legion of Merit. So we get into Operation High Jump. Have you ever heard of that?
I have not.
Okay. Talk to the listeners while I drink coffee.
Okay. Little fun fact about how crazy the weather is here in West Virginia. Saturday, it was literally beautiful outside. It was like 70 degrees. I got sunburnt from being outside all day. And now, 2 days later, it is pouring the snow. There's probably an inch of snow outside now, sticking. So, there goes the saying, if you don't like the weather in West Virginia, wait 15 minutes, it'll change. That's not far from the truth. That's all I got. Finish your sip.
Operation High Jump is where things still do not stay very creepy. They're still normal. Definitely.
Are they?
Yeah.
You're saying that like that's not the truth.
Yeah, so this guy almost died like 4 times.
Oh my goodness.
This whole time, I mean, what I've just told you, like his first 4 expeditions to like go to Antarctica, like he flew across the Atlantic and almost died, and then he flew to the Arctic Circle and almost died, and then he went to Antarctica and almost died from carbon monoxide, and then he was in the Pacific when all of this bad stuff was going down with Japan. So like he spent like,
I thought you were saying he almost died 4 times on this next thing you were talking about.
So in 1946, Secretary of the Navy James Forrestal appointed Byrd as officer in charge of Antarctic Developments Project. And that would be his 4th Antarctic expedition, codenamed Operation High Jump. This is Country Roads Creeps.
Imagine, that's the whole intro. Oh
yeah,
my
we haven't said it yet.
Because you were unprepared.
Yeah.
The music's just been playing the whole time on loop.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Supposed to last 6 to 8 months. Supposed to.
Oh no. Oh no. Yikes. Okay, so now we're getting into it.
No. Oh, I'm so excited.
Oh my god.
It was supported by a large naval force designated Task Force 68. They really missed an opportunity there, I think, but they were commanded by Rear Admiral Richard H. Cruzen. There were 13 U.S. Navy support ships besides the flagship USS Mount Olympus and the aircraft carrier USS Philippine Sea, 6 helicopters, 6 flying boats, 2 seaplane tenders, and 15 other aircraft were used. Total number of personnel involved was over 4,000. I saw somewhere, I think I'm going to mention it later on, there's like 4,700 people who were involved in this expedition.
Wow. 4,700? Is that what you just said?
Yeah.
4,700.
Mm-hmm.
Holy moly.
Yep. 400 times 10 plus 700.
Okay. Thank you.
That's 4 times 100, 10 times over, and then
Add 700.
7 plus 100
7 plus 100?
plus another 593. So anyway, this armada, I guess you call it, arrived in the Ross Sea December 31st, 1946, made some aerial explorations of an area about half the size of the United States, recording 10 new mountain ranges. And the major area covered was the eastern coastline of Antarctica from 150 degrees east to the Greenwich Meridian. Greenwich Meridian is where the time comes from.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? GMT.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the official story, which we obviously believe, and nothing weird happened. The end.
I feel
Just kidding.
That's not.
It's so weird. As the story goes, the USS was worried about Nazi expansion, usage, and/or escapage to Antarctica, especially following World War II. There's a lot of Nazi hunting going on following the war. There's going to be some future episodes on that. Operation Paperclip will 100% be an episode. I think I've gotten written down on the list. The Wunderwaffe will be an episode, probably a
that's
mini
definitely
episode.
on the list. I remember seeing that.
It's we're probably going to do a mini-sode on Argentina as well. Anyway.
Okay.
They were hunting Nazis. And Byrd, being pretty much the only guy with experience in Antarctica, he was contracted to lead the expedition. So there's not many official sources to point out that this expedition was to hunt Nazis, but we do know that there were a bunch of rumors about Nazis escaping to different places, and 100% were operations to hunt them down. So there was one rumor that 2 submarines visited Antarctica between June and August of 1945 before surrendering in Argentina later on. And there were some other rumors of a vast base on the actual continent of the continent of Antarctica, Huntington. Nazi Germany did, in fact, plan to expand their operation in Antarctica from December 17th, 1938 to April 12th, 1939. There was a German expedition to Antarctica, the one that Byrd was invited on. Mm-hmm. They were using the ship Schwabenland. It was sent to investigate the possibility of increasing the capacity of Nazi Germany's whaling industry by establishing a base for its whaling fleet. That's the first expedition to explore the area, and it was followed by a later expedition making land claims. And it explored the western parts of the Dronning Maud land claimed by Norway and named it New Schwabenland after the ship. So there's that. But there's no documented evidence to indicate that there was any continued German activity in the area during the war. So, what the heck?
Mm-hmm.
There's been some articles that refute the claim that there was a base established by the crew on the Schwabenland. They kind of cite their lack of experience, amount of materials, and the time frame kind of would make that impossible to accomplish. But nevertheless, there's rumors and conspiracies about a secret Nazi base in Antarctica, and that Hitler went into hiding there, and those have all circulated since the end of World War II. There actually is, the reason we're going to do something on Argentina is because there actually was a, how do you put it, so there's a village there that's full of white people with blonde hair and blue eyes, and they all have like Nazi memorabilia in their houses.
In Argentina?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. So that might be like a soon mini-sode, just because of the context of this one.
Yeah.
But the I guess the whatever you want to call it, the theory or conspiracy or whatever there is that there were a lot of high-ranking Nazi officials, and the rumor of potentially Hitler escaped to South America. We know that they were doing some experiments in South America on like twins and stuff. Mm-hmm. They were trying to make twins and experiment on twins and make them like super soldiers and stuff like that.
Yikes.
And so they went to Argentina, and I think Chile was part of it too, but there's some villages where you show up and there's like, they have like swastika flags hanging in their houses, and they're like, yeah, our uncle was a war hero, and it's the guy who's famous. Like, they're like, that's the guy that ran that rocket factory. It's like, what the heck? That's insane. I think it's Tim Kennedy that did a like a documentary thing on that. So, which I assume if we do an episode on that, we'll end up mentioning that a little bit more. But anyway, America did expand its Antarctic deterrence operations post World War II. They say targeted mainly against Soviets, but also everyone that we weren't explicitly friends with, and also Nazis. So Admiral Richard E. Byrd led a planned expedition for discovery, military training, and scientific investigation in the Antarctica region. That expedition returned with new discoveries and knowledge of previously uncharted areas of Antarctica. They took 11 journalists with them and sent over 2,000 radio messages back to Washington. The expedition took place at the Ross Ice Shelf on the south side of Antarctica from Dronningmaude Land and New Schwabenland, which lie on the north side. There are flight maps from the expedition that also show that they never flew near the areas explored by the Germans before the war. And even if a Nazi stronghold had existed, Operation High Jump never went to that part of Antarctica, so they say. These rumors about Nazi UFOs started to circulate in German nationalist circles during the 1950s, with the belief that a quote-unquote last battalion containing highly advanced UFOs was hiding in Antarctica. Increasing reports of UFO sightings have kind of given some credibility to the story at the time, but it wasn't until 1975 that some serious claims were made about the loss of aircraft during Admiral Byrd's expedition, and it was due to them being shot down by Nazis using advanced weaponry. The claim, supposedly. The rebuttal to that, they say, is one aircraft actually just crashed during a whiteout. Whatever. The German authors Mattern and Friedrich propagated some of the claims, but Friedrich was actually Ernst Zundel, a neo-Nazi publisher, who blended the stories of Operation High Jump with elaborate myths of Nazi resurgence. Zundel supported the UFO claim with a Spanish article in Chilean newspaper El Mercurio by one of the journalists from the operation, Lee Van Atta, claiming that Admiral Byrd allegedly warned about aircraft invasions from polar regions. However, the article was mistranslated. Byrd feared an attack by Soviet aircraft against the United States from North and South Pole, not Nazi flying saucers. So I have the quote here from El Mercurio, and it read, Admiral Richard E. Byrd warned today that the United States should adopt measures of protection against a possibility of an invasion of the country by hostile planes coming from the polar regions. The Admiral explained that he was not trying to scare anyone, but the cruel reality is that in a case of a new war, the United States could be attacked by planes flying over one or both poles. This statement was made as a part of a recapitulation of his own polar experience in an exclusive interview with the International News Service. Talking about the recently completed expedition, Byrd said that the most important result of his observations and discoveries is the potential effect that they have in relation to the security of the United States. The fantastic speed with which the world is shrinking, recalled the Admiral, is one of the most important lessons learned during his recent Antarctic exploration. I have to warn my compatriots that the time has ended when we were able to take refuge in our isolation and rely on the certainty that the distances, the oceans, and the poles were a guarantee of safety. End quote.
Interesting.
Nazi flying saucers kind of made a mix of some of the ideas of the UFOs and top secret Nazi technology, supposed lost prototypes and flight tests and all that. None of those have actually been proven to exist. Supposedly, they haven't released documents of a lot of the weapons that the Nazis were actually trying to produce, so
yeah,
it's possible that the world will never know. We're going to get into some of this in the Operation Paperclip episode, because for those of you who don't know, the Cliff's Notes of Operation Paperclip is that after the war, the winners of the war, being the Allied powers and the Soviets, split up some of the Nazi scientists and hired them to develop technology for them. So,
Yeah.
so it's assumed that they brought some of their technology that they were working on and some of the science that they were working on, and it became classified under some of the NASA programs and some of the like nuclear war programs and some of the intercontinental program, things like that. So anyway, all right. So Nazis did try to develop some of the Wunderwaffen, the wonder weapons, but we'll get into it later on. So they hoped that they could change the course of the war by doing that, which is like some of the ones that we actually know about, like the V rockets and stuff they were trying to make. They hoped that they could change how the war was going for them. Very few of them were actually ever developed, supposedly, or ever deployed, as kind of a waste of resources and some of the scientific expertise that they had. And it did result in a lot of deaths, mainly because of the slave labor, and kind of just made for a lot of propaganda for the Nazi government.
Yeah.
Anyway, so given that they supposedly didn't even go to the specific area of Antarctica that the Germans had been to, and there wasn't any confirmed info on escaped Nazis or crazy technology there, then why did they take 4,700 men with 2 destroyers, state-of-the-art aircraft carrier, with not only exploration planes, but bombers too, and included tankers, supply ships, icebreakers, 2 heavily armed seaplanes, and an attack submarine? They had full stock of some of the best ships, weapons, and technology available to the Navy. Why do you think they did that?
I don't know.
Probably because they were hunting Nazis. So the answer that some of them give is because training and weather studies that were supposedly going on was there's the cover story, right? Actually, none of the personnel training, practice maneuvers, or anything like that took place. No scientific study took place, they say. According to some of the classified documents and a hidden journal kept by Byrd, there were other objectives at hand, like extending American sovereignty over Antarctica, which was not only denied several times officially, but it wasn't necessarily even an officially approved plan. Another objective was to find and capture a secret Nazi base called Base 211 and capture any technology, including flying saucers, that they could. The mission, like I said, was expected to last 6 to 8 months. After 40 days, the base that Byrd's group had established was evacuated and they were forced to retreat.
Evacuated?
Mm-hmm. The mission was suddenly terminated. The task force that they had, Task Force 68, retreated, made a port in Chile, where some of the strange rumors about the findings started to spread. That's where Byrd spoke to the media and gave that quote about the devastating attacks that may be possible coming from the North and South Poles to El Mercurio, the news company place. Says that he wasn't trying to alarm anyone despite giving an extremely alarming statement, but he warned that in the event of a new war, the U.S. could be attacked by flying objects which can move from pole to pole at some incredible speeds. He claimed in some of the statements that there was a new enemy that could attack in any country at any time, no matter what the distance was.
Stressful.
Yeah. So after coming back to Washington, he was debriefed, even though he spent some time giving statements to the press after they came to Chile. After the debriefing in Washington, he never spoke about Operation High Jump ever again. The mission was immediately classified, and any sailors who spoke about it would be imprisoned. And the Navy did release a briefing, even though it was short, about the mission's achievements. The public ones, and admitted some sailors had been killed, didn't release how many. I've seen as high as like 900 people died on this mission. I don't know.
Jeez.
I don't know if that's true or how true it is or really where it comes from, exactly that number. But I did see it and I thought it might be worth putting it in there. So officially, the deaths were accidents and the bodies were buried there and not brought back. Should be probably noted now that just a couple days after the arrival of the crew of this task force noted strange lights in the sky, but they were out of radar range. And then sometime, multiple members of the crew claimed to see flying saucer type of aircrafts coming out of the water. A Navy plane took to the sky only to be shot down by a beam of energy. But the torpedo boat that was with them, 10 miles away, burst into flames and was destroyed. And this was only the first attack of several that would happen. The Navy ordered a retreat and left the area a full 6 months before their expedition was originally supposed to end. It's unconfirmed, but Lieutenant Sayerson wondered if those aircrafts were actually operated by escaped Nazis from a secret base under Antarctica. Richard Byrd himself had an episode of lost time for about 3 hours, which officially was blamed on radio failure. And the full pullout for the mission was blamed on poor weather conditions, actually. Even though 900 people supposedly died. So, there were sailors that died, but they say they crashed on whiteouts. So, maybe. But we've got a little bit more information to cover. Some
okay.
extremely non-weird, normal information to cover. When Richard Byrd returned, all of his journals were confiscated and classified, except for a mysterious one, which was passed down to his son and released to speak. Was released for him to speak about in, I think I saw somewhere it was like in the 90s, like 91 or 96. I don't remember exactly. It was written in the form of a flight log, and the diary describes how Admiral Byrd did his pre-flight checks. Everything is good. Weather is fine. At 8:15, he does a radio check to base. Basically, 8:15 hours radio check with base. Situation normal. At 9:10, he notices a colorful pattern in the snow, which isn't necessarily alarming or strange by itself, but he circles the area to get a closer look and radios in his findings. And then his instruments start to act strange. He writes that both of his compasses are going so haywire that he can't even use them, and he has to use his son to navigate and maintains a visual of the base camp. He reported that his controls are feeling sluggish, and he's worried about the wings icing up. And there's a little ice, but nothing major, so he keeps going and flies towards what he perceived to be a mountain range. And at 9:49 hours, 9:49 in the morning, he radios in, says, 29 minutes elapsed since first sighting of the mountains. It's no illusion, they are mountains and consisting of a small range that I've never seen before. So he crosses that mountain range, descends into what he described as a lush green valley with a river running through it. And he writes, there should be no green valley below. Something is definitely wrong and abnormal here.
Yeah.
We should be over ice and snow.
Because they're in the Antarctic, right?
Yep.
Yeah, there's no green.
To the port side, which is the left side. I had to Google that one. There are great forests growing on the mountain slopes, and our navigation systems are spinning. The gyroscope is oscillating back and forth. So he drops down and circles around for a better look, and he reported the green as being either moss or tight grass. The light seemed different there. He can see the ground easily, but he can't see the sun anymore. So that's really worrisome because he's using the sun to navigate.
Yeah.
So that worry is overshadowed by something, we'll call it unexpected.
Okay.
You want to take a guess at what it was?
I don't know.
A large animal is grazing, which he described to be an elephant, and then corrects himself saying it's a mammoth.
I was getting ready to say like a mammoth, large like a mammoth. Did they time travel?
So he drops to 1,000 feet, takes his binoculars, and confirms, yes, that's a mammoth.
What? Like a woolly mammoth?
Mm-hmm.
They time traveled.
These green pastures, by the way, stretch for miles. So it's not just a patch of land.
What in the world?
There's definitely not supposed to be animals here, at least as far as everybody knows.
Yeah.
He's so amazed that it takes him 30 minutes to realize it's not cold anymore. The frost on his windows is gone, and the frost on his wings is gone. He took his gloves off, and on the window of the plane's canopy,
Yeah.
He touches it, it's warm to the touch.
What?
He recorded an external air temperature of 74 degrees Fahrenheit. And his instruments start to work again, but the radio is out. Remember that official report where they said that he blamed the 3 hours of lost time on radio failure?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's flying over what appears to be countryside, maybe a pasture or something, and he sees something even more impossible than a mammoth. Please take a guess at what you think is more surprising than a mammoth grazing a green pasture in the Antarctic.
Cavemen.
A large, shining city.
I'm sorry. What? Pardon?
Richard Byrd grabs his controls, but nothing's working. And he notices a plane that he's in feels light and buoyant. And then on both sides of the plane, these weird aircraft start to approach you. And they're disc-shaped. They look like they're radiating light, but they're completely silent. The engine cuts off, but he's still flying completely controlled, still level and everything. Is being controlled by some outside force, probably from those UFOs, the disc-shaped UFOs. So things go from impossibly astounding, being in the Antarctic and over green meadows and valleys and mammoths, and then flying saucers come up and control his plane. And they go from that to completely terrifying when he sees the markings on the aircraft. Swastikas.
What?
So his radio comes back on, and a distorted voice, speaking English with a slightly German accent, says, "Welcome, Admiral, to our domain. We shall land you in exactly 7 minutes. Relax, Admiral. You are in good hands." Do you like my accent?
God.
My voice acting?
Yeah, that was good. What is going on?
The plane lands. Admiral Byrd is greeted by several men, all tall with blonde hair. Byrd is led into a platform which levitates and flies toward the city at a great speed. He's led to an elevator that takes him deep underground to have an audience with the Master.
And nobody else was with him. He was by himself.
By himself, yeah. He sits down at a long table with an older man sitting there who says his people are called the Ariani. Maybe kind of like Aryan. Are you messing with your microphone? Making sounds?
Yeah, sorry.
It's going to come into the mic. Everyone's going to hear that.
Yeah, I was moving one of the clips.
Man. So, he says they've been observing humans for a long time, but only now are choosing to interfere. He says that humans are too immature for atomic energy or atomic weapons, and they're at risk of destroying themselves. He said every time they try to make contact with the humans, their planes are fired upon and pursued by fighter planes. So instead, Richard Byrd is chosen to carry the message because he's famous and has a lot of respect as an explorer and everything. The text contains several allusions to this supposed, I guess, or sorry, I'm talking about his diary, mind you. The text in here has a lot of allusion to like, we're aliens and we're trying to save the human race and everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway. So, he comes back out, and the uh-oh. Is that you?
Yeah, you've
Oh my
said
God.
5 times.
The text here in his diary has like, we're aliens, we're here to save the human race. And all of these disc-shaped aircrafts, they're supposedly called the Flugelrad, and they have swastikas on them. And these aliens speak with a Nordic or Germanic accent, like every single one of them. They're like German aliens, right? Called the Aryans. So the encounter ends with Richard Byrd flying out of wherever this is at, this Green Valley, the Nazi planes or UFOs or whatever give him control back to his aircraft. They say the controls are yours now, and then they end it with Auf Wiedersehen.
What does that mean?
It means like goodbye in German.
Oh.
Yep.
Did he have carbon monoxide poisoning again and hallucinated all this?
Okay, well, hang on. Let me finish the episode.
Yeah.
So he dies in 1957.
Okay.
That's what I'm jumping to here.
Abrupt tone shift.
He dies in 1957, and that about a year and a half later, the Antarctic Treaty is signed, which makes it virtually impossible for anybody to visit the continent without special permission. And even with that permission, you can only go to a few designated special small places. It's like basically nowhere near the center of Antarctica.
Yeah.
So is it true? What do you think about this whole tale of him flying and there's green and a mammoth and aliens that are Nazis?
I think it's a good story. I definitely did not expect us to be talking about German Nazi aliens on this episode when you began it earlier.
I told you it wasn't weird. Totally normal stuff.
I stand by my question. Did he have carbon monoxide poisoning again and hallucinate all this?
Asking, do you think it's true or not?
I don't.
Really?
Yeah.
Come on. Okay. So the flight log that info comes from is fake. So a bunch of what the master told Richard Byrd is plagiarized from 1937, a 1937 film called Lost Horizon, where the main character is talking to the Dalai Lama, who gives the same warning for the year 1964. Also, there's a Valiant Thor reference. Have you ever heard of Valiant Thor? Have I ever told you about that?
No.
Okay, so supposedly back in like the 60s or whatever, this alien came to Earth and started telling everybody about how the nuclear weapons are going to destroy the human race and they have to really figure out what they're going to do about the climate and nuclear war and come to peace or whatever. And his name is Valiant Thor, and he is from a race of aliens that are peacekeepers, and the reason that we don't know any aliens yet and we're not part of the Galactic Council is because we're a war race and we don't know peace like the other aliens do. Mm-hmm. And so that's why they want to invite us. But so he has like a hidden ship, and basically it's like this whole fake story, but he's like supposedly visits the White House and stuff, and they do all these tests on his suit and everything, and he's an alien. But he tells them that the nuclear war is going to be a problem. So why in the world is every time there's aliens, they're telling us the nuclear war is bad? It's like they have some kind of propaganda to spread.
Right.
Like something like nuclear war is bad or something. I don't get that at all. Anyway, there's this guy, Raymond Bernard, who writes all kind of books about UFOs and Hollow Earth, mentioning Admiral Byrd. And when his lost diary gets released, guess who writes the foreword? Raymond Bernard. So there's a bunch of fake narratives and mistranslations. There was actually in the Antarctic, supposedly there was a warmish kind of lake with algae in it that was reported as a land of blue and green with brown hills instead of what Antarctica actually is, which is snow and ice and mountains. So there was a Russia story from 2006 where they did a documentary and they found all of this stuff and said that the United States is basically, they did go down there to hunt Nazis, and they actually found some Nazis and they like destroyed all this stuff, and they had a big battle there, and that there actually is a base that they're worried about being attacked from in either the North or the South Pole. And that comes from, like I said, a Russian documentary from 2006. So what the heck? Anyway, we get into a lot of flat Earth and Hollow Earth stuff. The Hollow Earth thing, because he supposedly, what people say is that he went to a land in Hollow Earth called Agartha, which is supposedly what the inside of the Earth country is, I guess, where aliens live or mole people or whatever they are. I don't know. So anyway, what do you think?
I mean, it sounds like it was just all made up.
That was
That was a wild tale. At no point in that did I know what you were going to say next. No way I could have predicted that that's what this story was going to be. It's an entertaining story, but it sounds like it was all just made up.
it's my favorite kind of story where they okay, so I'll give you the rundown of what I think is actually the truth here.
Okay.
They definitely took 4,700 men and submarines and destroyers just in case of the event that they found Nazis and had to kill a bunch of Nazis.
Okay.
Like almost 100%, they definitely did that.
Yeah.
They didn't go to the same region or whatever. We don't necessarily know that. Like there's, definitely a way that they could have kept the actual scope of the mission secret.
Yeah.
But, it's not... I don't know that it's necessarily plausible that any Nazis could survive in Antarctica, like, without regular resupply, right?
Yeah, that's not possible.
So, unless they were just going down there because there were rumors that some of them had escaped and they were staying there until, like, kind of the heat died down.
Yeah.
But, like, 100%, there were missions all around the world for, like, the next 20 years hunting Nazis. And actually, the CIA didn't stop hunting Hitler until like the 80s or 90s. So, because there were rumors that Hitler didn't actually die when they thought, because the Russians found his body and they burned it. And so they didn't actually have a body to go off of necessarily. And so they said, well, it could have been a body double that he used. And there's been some conspiracy about, is it actually a male skeleton at all? There's been some reports that it's a female skeleton. So the United States government spent all kinds of money hunting Adolf Hitler just in case it was possible that he was around still and had like escaped to South America or wherever.
Yeah.
So, I think it's definitely possible that they went to hunt Nazis. I don't think that they had UFO encounters there, and I definitely don't think that he went to Hollow Earth, because how could it be hollow if it's just one flat plane? I don't understand.
I'm so tired of you.
So it can't be both. It's either flat or hollow. So pick one.
Those are not the only options.
That's the only ones. Yep. Actually, okay. I know that the moon is a popular topic to like groan about on here, right?
Right.
Far more plausible that the moon is hollow than the Earth. For the only reason I'm saying that is because there was that one report that one time that I'm not even sure is confirmed as true, that when they landed something there and it rang like a bell for like hours and hours and hours.
I don't know what to say to that.
So based on that one report, it's more plausible that the moon is hollow than the Earth ever could be hollow.
Okay, I'll give you that.
I'll tell you what probably is hollow is not Antarctica. Probably not.
No.
Although they do say that it's weird that you can only go to Antarctica if you have special permission for certain things. People have said that it's kind of infuriating that you can't just go there to like see, And so then that does lead to some conspiracy based on like, okay, well, what's the government hiding in Antarctica then?
Probably because they don't want to pay for the rescue missions for the average Joe that decides they're going to go to Antarctica and get stranded.
Okay. I feel like they wouldn't have to, like you could.
They would be obligated.
No, I think you could.
Why don't people go get lost in the woods?
They don't have rescue missions to Mount Everest and people climb Mount Everest. There's dead bodies they use as markers so they know where they're at on Mount Everest. So
that's true, but
I'm saying like they wouldn't like, I don't know, if you and your buddies wanted to go to, Antarctica to explore and you died, there's no that it's cold and terrible
They're
there.
just trying to like preserve it because it's not ruined by humans yet. Because we
That's
mess up
the
everywhere we
excuse.
go.
That's the excuse, and they want to keep the Hollow Earth Aryans from getting out. And they don't want you going over the flat Earth ice wall. Supposedly. Those are the theories. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that that's what it is. I'm saying those are the theories I've seen. They don't want people going to the ice wall because it surrounds the entire thing. It's not actually a little continent there at the bottom. It's a whole ring around the Earth. So, anyway, that's Admiral Byrd, and nothing bad happened and nothing weird.
Good episode.
So, actually, this whole time I have been leaning into the nothing weird happened thing, and it turns out nothing weird did happen because it was hoaxed. So, joke's on me.
Still a good story.
Is there anything else you want to say before we end it?
So
Or questions that you have, or
I don't have any
statements?
questions. I have statements. Oh, when you first mentioned that you were going to talk about Admiral Byrd, and I told you it reminded me of that guy I learned about, Ernest Shackleton, who also explored in Antarctica. And so I had listened to the podcast. I think it was from the podcast Against the Odds, which is an excellent podcast. Love that one. Check it out if you haven't. So his story is really cool. And after you started talking about Admiral Byrd, I got interested in Shackleton again. So I looked him up and I was reading more about him. And through that, I learned about this thing called the third man phenomenon. And so I think that's what I'm going to talk about on my next episode, probably a mini episode. But the quick overview is that there seems to be a common thing that when people are in like these survival situations, they'll feel like there's an extra person there with them that's like encouraging them to keep going and not give up and like prodding them in the right direction and stuff. So that happened on Shackleton's trip.
Yep.
And so there's some other things where that has popped up and that kind of piqued my interest. So next hand episode might be a mini episode about third man phenomenon.
Yep.
Unless I change my mind at the last minute, but we'll see.
Well, you already said it. You can't change your mind now.
I can do what I want.
It's on the recording. You're not allowed.
I didn't lock myself into it like you did with Admiral Byrd. I'm saying maybe.
I'm thinking about also doing a mini episode next. So maybe we can do like a dual mini-sode. Maybe not.
But then that's not a mini.
Well, it'd just be like it'd be both of us doing a mini on a full thing. Maybe not. Maybe not. Scratch that idea. We'll just do mini-sodes. But
which our mini episodes are still like 45 minutes. They're not really mini.
Or it's a mini episode. It's an hour long. Jeez.
Pretty much.
Get over it.
We haven't done a true mini episode except maybe the catfish one. And it still was kind of long.
I rambled about fish for like 40 minutes. That's not really mini. We'll call them medium episodes.
If it's like under an hour, we're calling it a mini.
So yeah, that's
good.
I really don't know what I want to cover next. Like maybe like I mentioned a few that I want to do. We might have to do like the Nazis in Argentina or something next as like a mini episode. I don't know that there's a lot of information to cover.
Yeah.
Just because it happened to be like a bulk of some of the weird information in this one. But Operation Paperclip is like a gigantic episode, probably. Not a gigantic, but
Well, break it into parts.
hour and a half probably episode if I keep rambling like I do.
Why don't you split it and do 2 parts?
Never.
I can't sit for an hour and a half anymore. I'm struggling right now, as is to sit here.
I would like to do an ocean episode, but
Yeah, that'd be cool.
maybe we can do a mini or like a joint episode about the scariest ocean stuff that we think. Maybe
That
that's
would be
possible.
fun.
This is again the part of the podcast where me and Hannah have a business meeting at the end, like the last 10 minutes. So So this, you know what this kind of reminds me of is like there's a guy that I watch on Twitch sometimes who he kind of has blown up recently doing YouTube shorts, but I guess his business, because he has like the Twitch stuff, obviously, and then YouTube is another source of income, and then he's got like some kind of animal rescue that he does. So this whole thing is like technically incorporated or whatever. So he's like, the dumbest thing that I have to do as a business is I have to have a meeting with the board, which is only me, and we have to elect, which means I have to vote on who the board president is, which is me. And I have to keep meeting notes of this to stay incorporated.
That's hilarious.
And so this is like our version of that, where me and Hannah have to have a business meeting once every other week for like 10 or 15 minutes at the end of every episode.
And just the two of us doing what we want to do.
And this is like our meeting notes. And then every year we're going to have to vote on who is co-hosts for the podcast. I guess. I don't know. So did you know? Okay, listen. Did you know that the first episode that we did was on my birthday?
That's when it got posted? Or that's when we recorded? We didn't record on your birthday.
We recorded, I think it got posted on my birthday.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So.
Cute.
Yeah. So that'll be 1 year. We're almost at a year. We've been doing this for 9 months.
Wow.
Yep. Almost like it's long enough to have a baby.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That is crazy.
Which, by the way,
there's going to be a baby present soon.
How's pregnancy treating you?
We have been so blessed. I've honestly had the smoothest pregnancy. I'm so thankful.
Yeah. It's like, if you had to describe your pregnancy the way that you would describe your brain, both would be smooth.
I'm quitting.
No wrinkles on there.
This is the last episode of Country Roads Creeps. Hope y'all enjoyed it, because we're done. Shane's not invited to my house anymore. No, it's gone so well. We are about to start the third trimester, so we're 2/3 of the way there.
Yep. This is the... How many weeks is it to have a baby? 40?
40. Yep, that's full term. A lot of babies come before 40 weeks, but...
So why do they say it's 9 months to be pregnant instead of 10 months? Because that's 10 months, isn't it?
Well, months aren't exactly 4 weeks.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Some are shorter, some are longer.
Yeah. Thanks, the Gregorians, for that mess up.
Yeah.
So whoever figured out that calendar, jeez.
Let's wrap it up, because I got to get off this couch. I'm uncomfortable.
Okie dokie. We'll see you next week. Hannah is going to cover something, and I will listen. And that's it for Admiral Byrd. Nothing weird, actually, as it turns out, except for, I guess, Aryan master race aliens or whatever it was. Like, what?
Yeah.
What the heck? What? I'm confused about it still. Anyway, thanks for listening. Be safe driving home. Watch over the not bear. Not. Bye.
Bye.